I'm Jackie.
And I'm Ashley.
And welcome to episode 2 of Red Rum and Rosé.
Yes. What type of wine are we drinking today?
I think that it is Stella Rosa, and it's a sparkling red. But I will say that it's not one that we particularly like.
No.
It's just been sitting in my wine case since November 2018 for my Friendsgiving party. It's just too sweet. So,
I mean, the gesture was really nice.
Yeah, but they brought 2 bottles, which was a lot.
Yeah,
because we actually... No, they brought 3! They brought 3 bottles because we drank one that night, and then I know that... I'm pretty sure I've had this one with you, and then I whipped it out today because we didn't have any other wine. And I was like, let's get rid of this. So today's episode is about beauty queens in celebration. I guess I feel weird saying in celebration, but of the start of the Bachelorette season for Hannah B, Hannah Beast,
Roll Tide,
Miss Alabama Hannah. So we're doing beauty queens this week. My story, I am kind of excited to tell you about because one of the girls in the story actually reminds me of you.
Really?
So I've been like really, I've been wanting to tell you about the story since I started researching it.
Oh gosh.
Because, yeah, and I will get there. I'm not going to tell you now how it reminds me of you.
Yeah, because I am nowhere close to being a beauty queen at all.
I didn't say you were the beauty queen.
Oh, damn. Oh no, I'm the creeper. Oh my god. I'm excited now. Let's get started.
Okay, my story has kind of 3 main people. One of them is the beauty queen, but it takes place in Napa, and we live in California, so I've gone to Napa a couple times.
I have never been. I don't know what's wrong with me.
So let's talk about Napa as it currently is. Right now, there's only about 80,000 people that live there. And surrounding Napa are places like Yountville, St. Helena, and Calistoga, and all of those places are food and wine areas. I think the French Laundry is in Calistoga.
I always want to call it the dirty laundry, and I don't know why.
It's because you have a lot of dirty laundry.
Yes, I do. It takes me forever to do my laundry. Side note,
well,
sorry.
We were just doing laundry. We were doing like 3 weeks of laundry right there. So the city of Napa is the heart of the Napa Valley wine region. Like I said, I've been there a few times. You haven't. But it's super, super beautiful. But outside of the wineries, tasting rooms, and restaurants, I don't really remember having much else to do there. So I would definitely call it a smaller city.
So with all the fires, is it still pretty put together after that? Because we had some major fires there that I've heard a ton of wineries burnt down.
I think we went after the fires, and actually a lot of places were able to still sustain. And I guess the way that that the grapes work is they were actually still able to harvest a lot of their grapes.
I wonder if their wines were very smoky that year.
I think they just had to change. I know you were making a joke, but I'm trying to be I was like trying to make it serious. I think they just have to describe the flavor a little bit differently because the grapes were still fine. They were happening actually around the time we went to Carmel. Remember we went to Caraccioli? They were still able to harvest their grapes. The workers were provided breathing masks and stuff. So I think the Napa region has recovered because most of the damage was in Sonoma. Anywho, they're a smaller city compared to where we live in the Silicon Valley. The house where our main story takes place was where our 3 main women lived, and it was in a small neighborhood on the 2600 block of Dorset Street in Napa. But in 2004, the town hadn't seen a murder in 2 years. So we're talking about a really safe city, small, relatively quiet other than the wine industry, just not really expecting anything bad to happen there. So let's move on to the women of our story, and that's Leslie Mazzara, Adriane Insogna, and Lauren Minza, I think is how you say her last name. Leslie is our 26-year-old South Carolina native who was born in Florida, and she is our beauty queen. She went to high school in Greenville, South Carolina, and the population there is only about 68,000. And I keep saying only so-and-so because San Jose is over 1 million.
Yeah, well over 1 million
which is where, I technically live in Sunnyvale, but all of the Bay Area is basically just kind of like one place. And San Jose on its own is over 1 million now at this point. It's huge. So anything under, the 100,000 to me is tiny. Pretty small.
That's like a small town.
And so I brought that up because going to Napa probably wasn't a big cultural shock for her. Whereas I think maybe if one of us moved to a really small town, we'd kind of find it odd if we ran into the same people at the grocery store all the time.
All the time, yeah.
So that's why I wanted to point it out, that she just kind of went from a different small city to another small city. She went to the University of Georgia, where she got her BA in philosophy in 2003. And while she was in school, she was a member of the lacrosse team and karate club. She competed in the 2003 Miss South Carolina pageant, making raising money for abused children her platform.
Oh, wow.
And that was after being crowned Miss Williamston in 2002. So I don't think she won the Miss Carolina pageant, but she was Miss Williamston. And in 2004, she moved to Napa to be closer to her mother, moving in with Adriane and Lauren. She worked as a sales coordinator with a winery in Rutherford, California. She was described by friends and family as having a bubbly personality, someone who could elevate the mood of everyone around her. As we talk about her more, you'll see that every single person that talks about her talks about how, like, everybody fell in love with her. Everybody wanted to be around her. And she was just a lovely, lovely person.
Poor thing.
And then, so she moved in with Adriane. And Adriane was a native to the area. She was a student athlete and longtime Girl Scout in Calistoga. She went to Calistoga High when at 16 she was in a terrible car accident that left her with short-term memory loss. Like, she should not have lived this. The car turned over multiple times, but she survived, and despite all of that, her natural drive pushed her through, and she landed a college scholarship. So she went on to Cal Poly and got a degree in civil engineering, and while she was there, she participated in lots of sports. She was a Girl Scout troop leader, an officer in the Society for Civil Engineers, and she helped build canoes that were entered in competitions. She went back to Napa, and she played volleyball, softball, and volunteered for a lot of charitable activities. She went on to work at the Napa Sanitation District as an assistant engineer, where she met her best friend Lily and Lily's fiance Eric, who both will come into the story again later. Lily and Eric would frequently come over to the home and spend time with Adriane, and Lily remembers Adriane as being super outgoing, funny, strong, and tough. And then there is Lauren. She's the third roommate, and her and Adriane got along really, really well. She was also athletic, a go-getter, a political science degree major, and she was a volleyball coach at the time. So really, we just had 3 young women who were active, successful, and really just trying to live their best lives. We're coming to Halloween 2004. I think Leslie had moved in with them back in February or beginning of the year-ish, and they're just handing out candy to the neighborhood children. I feel like I'm at that age now, and they're 26. I'm 26 right now, so I am their age, where I just want to stay at home and I want to watch movies and I want to hand out candy rather than going out. And I mean, that's what I did last year. I don't like going out to parties in general.
Yeah,
but
you
especially
don't go
for
out
Halloween
often, and if you do go out, it's usually just with your boyfriend and myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Drink wine.
We're a party on our own.
Yeah,
I like it.
Party animals. Anyway, the way that the rooms are set up in the Dorset house is Lauren is the only one on the first floor of the home, and Adriane and Leslie are on the top floor. Lauren's woken up at about 1 a.m. when the security light was triggered. She thought that an animal just must have walked by and triggered it, so she dismissed it. But then she started hearing noises from upstairs, for a second she thought just that maybe one of her roommates had a visitor, but when she opened her eyes, she just knew that something wasn't right.
Oh, God.
And that's when she heard the scream and realized that it was Adriane. She heard things being thrown around and then a second scream. And obviously right away, she knew that somebody was in danger. She stood in her doorway and could hear Adriane just saying, "Oh, God, help me." And this is where she reminds me of you, Ashley. So you want to take a guess as to what Lauren does?
She took off, didn't she? She was just like, "Peace, yo, I'm out of here."
Yes, so the reason Lauren reminds me of Ashley is because we were chilling in my apartment, and I was standing in the kitchen, and she was sitting across from me, and I heard a noise in the master bedroom to my right, and I look over, and I can see a picture fall from the wall. So I wasn't alarmed, but Ashley starts to get up, and I was like, oh, a picture just fell. And she sits back down, and I was like, were you going to go check on the noise? And she's like, no, I was going to leave. I was just going to leave you here. I was like, what are you talking about? You're just going to leave me in the apartment if somebody was in here? She's like, oh, yeah, I was just going to go.
Okay, I can take scary movies. I can read scary stories. I love hearing about murder and serial killers. But in real life, I am the biggest fucking pussy. I am so scared of everything that, yes, I know that I probably won't have a good fighting chance. So I'm going to take off. I'm sorry if you can't keep up. Bye. Love you. Bye.
So that is when Lauren ran into the backyard through a sliding glass door, but she stood there defenseless. She just thought to herself, well, I just opened a door for an attacker to come out right where I'm standing. But then she hears the person leave through the living room window, or just a window in the house.
Wait, did no one call the police during all of this commotion?
Well, so I'm guessing Lauren didn't bring her cell phone, because I think later on we talk about her having a cell phone. But if you think about it, you've been woken up in the middle of the night and you're startled and you get up and realize something's going on. You probably didn't reach for your cell phone first, right? So she probably got up, realized there was danger. By the time she booked it outside, she didn't have her phone.
Okay, girl, let me just tell you, when I hear scary ass noises, the first thing I grab is my phone, because sometimes I've even called you when I've been scared. I've called so many friends being like, can you stay on the phone with me while I check the house because I heard a noise? And I also have 2 freaking baseball bats and a freaking sword in my room because I am just that scared of the world.
Sword?
I have a freaking sword. Yeah, it's from the anime Bleach, if we have any anime fans out there. But yes, I have a sword in my room as well, so I'm well stocked.
Don't be in her room if Ashley decides she's a sleepwalker.
Oh, God. I don't know if I've ever slept walk.
I don't know. I don't think I do that. I don't want to be in your house. Okay.
I will protect you as much as I can.
No, you will run out of the house. You will not protect me.
Keep up with me.
No, you won't protect shit. You will run out of the house and give no fucks who's left behind. You're not protecting anybody.
It's
let's
fight
be
or
real.
Flight, and I am.
Yeah, so you're the flight. You can't fight and flight. So you're gonna flight and not protect anybody. Oh my goodness. You're not defending anybody. So she hears the person leave, never lays eyes on this person, and decides to go back inside. So once she's inside, she can hear Adriane calling for help, and Lauren called back to her to see if she was okay. And of course, she replied no. So Lauren tries calling 911 on the landline, because it was a landline time still. And this was in the kitchen, but she couldn't get through, so I'm guessing maybe the attacker cut the lines.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Lauren goes upstairs and sees Leslie face down in a pool of her own blood.
Oh.
Adriane's still alive, but has multiple stab wounds and can no longer speak.
Oh, no.
At some point, she's back outside, gets in her car, drives away, and calls 911, and the police are on scene within a few minutes. So she does have a cell phone.
See, if you just had called the police from your cell phone just to begin with, maybe they'd be alive. I don't know.
So Adriane unfortunately dies soon after the paramedics arrive, and Leslie had already passed away.
Sounded like it.
Lauren cannot identify an attacker and has no clue what a reason could be that somebody came in and just
killed both her roommates and then not her.
And there's not a lot of clues at the scene, and no murder weapon is left, but the police collected a lot of evidence just in hopes that they would find something. What they did find is a broken window, and they think that's how the person got into the house, and there's actually blood by the window, which they assume is the murderers. They also found cigarettes outside the home, and they hope that they can test that for DNA to see if it'll match the blood. The cigarettes were also a rare brand that had only been around for about 4 months when the murder happened. Awesome. But this detail they didn't immediately release to the public. And you know how they like to keep certain things quiet? Just so that way if they do have a suspect, it's only something that the suspect will know.
Yeah.
So I believe that's why they wanted to keep that part quiet. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks after the murders, Lily, who was Adriane's best friend, organized a vigil for her friends, and she really wanted to figure out what happened and just really wanted justice for her friends. She was closest to Adriane, but of course, with the other girls living there, she got to know them and they're friends of her best friend. The murders really shocked the small town. People were scared. Nothing like that had ever happened in Napa. Adriane's friend Lily said that everyone had some theory. There was talk about the girls were doing drugs and that they owed somebody money.
Okay, that does not sound likely, especially when you describe them. They just sounded like strong, very well put together. I mean, you can do drugs if you want, but it doesn't sound like they were in that kind of crowd. Especially, no, I don't buy that. Detective Ashley doesn't.
Don't worry, there's more. Some even thought that it might have been a mob hit because the three women had Italian last names.
Okay. Well, are you kidding me?
It gets better.
Oh, please.
As improbable as it might sound, some people even thought that because Leslie's boss, Francis Ford Coppola, if you recognize that name for wine, that's where she worked, had made a famous mafia movie, he had connections to the mob.
Oh, Jesus.
I think he was in The Godfather or something like that.
Ew.
And this was the biggest one. Adriane's mother, Arlene, actually thought that it had to be somebody Leslie had known because she was the newcomer to town. And police also thought that Leslie was the intended target.
Because it started off with her, right?
It appeared to be that way because her wounds seemed like she was attacked in her sleep. But I think we'll look more into the scene a little bit later. But the police also did think because of that she was the intended target. But even Adriane's mother was kind of putting quote-unquote blame essentially on Leslie, who had, lost her life. Police interviewed over 1,000 people and collected hundreds of DNA samples. One of the first people that they tested was Adriane's on and off, again, boyfriend. They actually pounded on his door just a few hours after the women were killed, and they had their relationship troubles, but he was eliminated as a suspect. They still don't immediately find anything despite all of these DNA samples. They work really hard for almost a year despite not having much to go off of.
A year?
Yeah. Police are very convinced, though, that the killer knew the victims and that this wasn't a random attack. Looking at the scene, Detective Todd Schulman could tell that the killer knew where the rooms were. He or she went straight for the stairs, straight up to the bedrooms, and it appeared, as you had brought up, that Leslie was the first victim and was attacked in her sleep. But why Leslie? Friends and family said that while she had only been in California for a few months, she was very popular. She got a lot of attention when she walked into a room. She was very beautiful, and if she walked in, people were captivated by her. She had even dated a few men in Napa, one being a man who had a very jealous streak. Her friend Katie even said he had this very dark, evil gaze. I'll never forget his eyes, ever. And her friends wanted her to get rid of him. Often, many of the men that she had dated in the past would buy her nice gifts, hoping to win her over. And she was just the type of girl that everybody wanted to fall in love with. And on the night of the murders, the father of one of the men Leslie had broken up with had tried to repeatedly reach her on the phone. And when one of her other friends, Amy, found that out, she was instantly creeped out and just thought that something was immediately wrong there as well. Where we're at now, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. Who do you think could have done this to them?
To be honest, I have no clue. I don't know why, but I just find it very weird that the person who went and killed 2 out of 3 people, like, why didn't he even attempt? I mean, he went all the way, because the one who survived was on the first floor, right? So if he had to go up the stairs, wouldn't it have made sense to kill the girl that was on the first floor first and then go upstairs? Because, I mean, you can't go anywhere from upstairs. You never run upstairs. I hate in scary movies.
Oh, I know. They always go
run
upstairs.
Where the fuck are you going to go?
Out the window?
Yeah. And then break your leg or back or neck. I don't know. But it would have just made sense if it was just a random thing. So I'm almost thinking that maybe the roommate on the first floor has a connection with the killer.
The killer? Okay. So we're in February 2005 right now. Life is having to go on. Lily now gets married. She had put off the wedding given the death of her best friend and invites Adriane's mother to read scriptures at their wedding. Adriane couldn't be there, so it was nice for Lily to have Adriane's mother there. And in September, police decided to make a key piece of evidence public, and that was the cigarettes. they actually also found out that the DNA that they had found in the blood matched the DNA on the cigarettes, and that rare brand, it was called Turkish Gold, a variation of Camel cigarettes that had, just as a reminder, only been on the market recently. Just 5 days later, the police call Adriane's mother to let her know that they've made an arrest, and it was someone that the women knew. The killer was under so much pressure that they had written a suicide note to their parents, and when the parents confronted the killer, they were the ones that actually convinced them to go to the police. Any final thoughts?
Is it the girl's fiance?
Police had arrested Eric Koppel, the new husband of Adriane's best friend, Lily.
What up? See, I should just be a detective. I'm so good at this.
After I walked you through all the steps.
You did walk me through. We could be a team. Let's be a team.
So he had turned himself in. He came into the station actually with his wife and family.
Like, why did he do it? Why?
We'll get to the why, kind of.
Sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
But I have a timeline here.
Okay.
So Eric had gotten really nervous when they had announced that the DNA matched, and they talked about the cigarettes because it was such a rare brand. You know, he realized that the walls were closing in. And some people thought, you know, did the police miss the mark on this one? Should they have solved this earlier? And to that they said eventually they would have gotten to him.
Eventually.
They would have gotten a DNA sample. It would have ended up matching. It was just that they finally released the cigarettes, and he felt the pressure, and he came in. And so when they tested his DNA to the DNA that they found at the scene, it matched.
I just don't understand, though. Like, why wait? Like, it's been over a year now, right? Or about a year since it happened.
Almost a year, yeah.
So it's like, why wait that long when you could have... I mean, he should have been a suspect right away because he knew the girls. Yeah. So if they had just tested it immediately... then
I think what was going on was they kept trying to meet with him and he was dodging them,
which you would think would raise
more flags. But yeah, so that's kind of what I could find on why they hadn't tested him yet. But that's why people were wondering, did they drop the ball?
Yeah,
because he was a close family friend. But nobody suspected him. He had no history. He was only friends with them through his wife. He was only over with his wife. You know, and he never had a criminal record, ever. And nobody ever had anything bad to say about him. So when this information was released, Arlene apologized to Leslie's family because she had originally said that the killer was after Leslie. And Leslie's family also felt like her name was being tarnished. You know, they were saying all these things about her, that she was dating men, that she lived a less quiet lifestyle than Adriane. So they did apologize. So what happened? Let's rewind to the night of the murder with the information that was given to Detective Schulman after Eric confessed. Eric and Lily had attended a party that Halloween night where Eric had gotten very intoxicated and passed out right when he got home. He woke up, grabbed some zip ties, a 4 to 5 inch knife, and drove to the house on Dorset.
Just like, okay, I'm just gonna wake up after being drunk and just grab all these things.
Yeah.
And who has zip ties on them?
Yeah,
just like
so this is his account of the night. So let's just remember that as we're going through that this is his account.
Okay.
He stands there in front of the garage and smokes a couple cigarettes underneath the security light. So he's the one that triggered it. He enters the home through the downstairs kitchen window, which he tried to pry open with the knife. And I forgot to mention earlier that Lauren's dog had growled, but she, again, just dismissed it because it was just one. It was one little bark or one little growl, not anything too disturbing. Mm-hmm. So he hears that when he comes in, but I guess still just continues. In his account, he goes straight upstairs to Adriane's room and falls asleep on a pile of clothes. Then Adriane startles him when she turns on the light, and he says that he didn't want her to make any noise. He claims that from there he doesn't remember what happened, but that he ended up walking over to Leslie's room. The door was open and it was dark, but he doesn't remember stabbing her. He says that his eyes were closed.
Okay.
In other stories I've read, though, police do believe that Leslie was killed first.
I mean, it just seems like it.
Adriane had a lot of defensive wounds. She had cuts on her fingers. She was bruised. She was cut, like, all over. Whereas Leslie, her wounds looked like she was attacked in her sleep. Was she maybe a heavy sleeper? I can't imagine anybody being that heavy of a sleeper where her next door roommate was being attacked and she didn't wake up. I mean, maybe some people do sleep really heavy. I just don't see it.
If you could, okay, there was one time I was staying at a friend's apartment and I had fallen asleep in their living room and the windows were open. And the next morning I heard a blood-curdling scream, and it woke me up, and immediately I felt nauseous and just like so freaked out, and my heart was racing. I thought it was my friend, and it turned out to be like a neighbor like across the way screaming because she wasn't on her meds. It was a whole fiasco. But I mean, I feel like if there's someone who is being attacked and you hear that, like there's
something unsettling, and you would probably wake up.
Exactly.
So that's where his story to me doesn't really make sense. Like, Adriane had all of these wounds that showed that she really tried to fight back. And when she was buried, her mom said that Adriane had never worn a turtleneck in her life, but she needed to be buried in one. And it still didn't cover the extent of the wounds. So that's how much this girl tried to fight back.
Poor thing.
So his story doesn't really make sense because just the way the wounds worked out. So when he goes to leave, he leaves the way he came in and actually cut himself on the mini blind, and that's where he left the blood. He flees the home in his car, ditches the knife, throwing it out the window, and he doesn't know where it is. It's still never been found. He goes home. They have a fire pit. He starts a fire and burns the clothes. Lauren does wonder, though, if having her door closed actually saved her life that night. That there was just a closed door. He didn't want to open it. Maybe he thought Lauren wasn't home and just walked by it. So she does suffer from a lot of survivor's guilt from this night. And so really the big question is why? You know, we don't ever really get a why. What Eric says is that he was having trouble with his family and his wife, and he was feeling suicidal. Some people really believe that he just became jealous of the friendship between Adriane and Lily because Eric had stated, "I was afraid my relationship with Lily, the singular ray of light in my black world, was in peril of collapsing." So that he just, out of jealousy, decided to kill his soon-to-be wife's best friend. That's kind of the closest thing that people have kind of come to.
That's insane.
In 2006, in exchange to pleading guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, the death penalty was taken off the table and it won't go to trial. But he does waive the right to seek an appeal, and he agreed that he cannot profit from the death of the victims. So that means no book deals, no paid interviews, things like that. And he'll spend the rest of his life in prison with no possibility for parole in exchange for that death penalty being taken off. He also waived the right to talk about the case to anyone except for members of the clergy, meaning that media interviews aren't allowed. So, you know, we really may never get to hear what his motive was because it won't go to trial. But on that same note, if it went to trial, prosecution would have to think of that motive and prove motive. So it might have been a little bit more complicated. And this kind of just closes everything and spares the family from hearing what their daughters went through that night. There was also a subclause that if he breaks any of the rules, like getting paid or speaking to people about the case, that he will be fined and that money will go to a nonprofit chosen by the family of the victims. The last thing is that, you know, the families and Lily were able to give victim impact statements at the court. That's where Adriane's mom made that statement about the turtleneck. But one thing that was interesting is what Lily said. She said, "In the days before he confessed, I knew something was terribly bothering him. I told him, 'Eric, there's nothing in this world that you could do to make me love you less.' Those words are just as true today as they were that afternoon."
Whoa.
So essentially she's forgiven him for murdering her best friend and her best friend's roommate, laying next to her for almost a year, knowing that he murdered her best friend.
It's disgusting.
And inviting the mother to the wedding, knowing that he had killed her daughter. So that was the story of Leslie and Adriane.
I am so curious as to what all of these people look like, to be honest. Like, what does he look like? Is he a good-looking guy?
Mm-mm.
No? I don't know why I even asked that.
I know.
Is he good looking? I don't know.
Ashley wants to date a creeper.
Yeah, I do. Whatever. Just kidding. Don't.
Women marry people in prison all the time.
Oh, I could totally be one of those.
Charles Manson, I think, had a wife before he was put to death. Or he died.
Ted Bundy got married before, too.
He did. Scott Peterson has a wife or a girlfriend.
So fucking weird. That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine, like, your boyfriend being jealous of our friendship and then, like, killing me. Could you imagine? But, I mean, I'm friends with him, too, though, so it's okay. Like,
I'm crazy.
I mean, it's not okay.
For some reason, when I was reading that, I didn't even think about it.
Like, I mean, we've been close for forever. So it's kind of like, I can't even imagine one of my best friends' significant other just being jealous of, or like a friend being jealous of another friend, because we've come across that before in a different little circle. Mm-hmm. That was fun. Anyways, the case that I've chosen this week is a pretty old case that finally closed after 12 years. It was they say it was never cold, but it was pretty much cold for 12 years. I actually heard about this case from a podcast called Up and Vanished by Payne Lindsay. And if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend it. He pretty much went all out. And apparently a lot of people say that the case closed because of him, because he went in.
I haven't actually listened to that podcast. I know.
Listen to it.
I know.
It's really good.
I did listen
Shout out Payne.
I listened to True Crime Garage, which they covered probably a much smaller portion, because I think his whole podcast was dedicated to Tara, right?
Yeah, so it's about Tara Grinstead? I
think it's Grinstead.
I'm really bad with last names. But he went all out, and it was, so if you haven't listened to it, I mean, this was one of the podcasts that got me into listening to podcasts, so I would recommend it. It's a lot longer than what I'm going to say. So Tara was an American beauty queen and high school history teacher who lived in a very small town, Ocilla, Georgia. She won the title of Miss Tifton in 1999 and competed in the Miss Georgia beauty pageant. So she was a really smart woman and really wanted to focus on going to college, so she actually used her winnings to help pay for her to go to college. She was a very ambitious young woman, and she graduated college and earned her master's degree. She then became a history teacher in 1998 at Irwin County High School in Ocilla, but she vanished on October 22nd, 2005 at the age of 30. Very young to go missing.
Yeah, you know what the funniest thing, no, it's not funny, but the, I guess, most interesting thing about reading cases that you may have known about when you were younger is I experienced this with, like, Lacey Peterson, because when she went missing, I was pretty young, and I thought that she was pretty old.
Yeah, way older.
But she was 25 when she went missing. I'm 26, you're 28, and I just couldn't imagine my life ending right now. I still feel so young, so all of these women's lives were taken away when they just had so much more
when they
left
pretty
to
much
live.
Just started, you know? So the night of her disappearance, she attended a local barbecue after visiting a beauty pageant where she coached young contestants. According to eyewitnesses, Tara told people she was going to go home and watch the recording of the earlier pageant at her house. 2 days later, on a Monday, she didn't show up to work, which was very unlike Tara. Her stepmom, Carrie, said that Tara was very dedicated to her job and was always punctual. So it was a huge red flag that she just didn't show up for work. Police received a call from Tara's neighbors that Monday morning, but by the time, no one had seen or heard from Tara for 34 hours. And the first 48 hours are the most crucial in finding a missing person. And already 34 hours just gone. When the police had arrived at Tara's house in Ocilla, immediately things seemed off. Tara's car was still in the driveway, but her driver's seat was pushed farther back than how tall Tara even was. So that was a little weird. And there was also an envelope of cash just sitting on her dash. Going up to her house, the police found one latex glove in the front yard, and in her front door, a business card was wedged inside. So that was a little like, why is there a latex glove just in my front yard? Or in her front yard. My front yard. What? Anyway. Tara's purse and keys were missing, and her cell phone was inside the house charging. Now, who leaves the house without their keys, car, or phone?
Yeah.
I never leave without my phone on me. I mean, I could be out somewhere, and what if there's an emergency and I don't have my phone? And plus, I don't really remember I don't even remember your number. I remember my mother's number. That's about it, you know?
I know my mom's and Ben's.
Yeah, I don't.
And the home phone.
Yeah, I don't really remember a lot of numbers, so I need my phone.
There's really no need to anymore.
Exactly. It does really
but I will
sad.
say that I leave the house a lot without my keys, phone, wallet,
You do.
But only if the dog is gone at the same time. If I leave and the dog is at home and all that stuff is at home, then there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't bring stuff when I walk the dog.
So I know that if you ever go missing and all your stuff is home, it's not a weird coincidence or anything like that.
Unless the dog is
gone.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, unless the dog is there.
Yeah. If the dog is gone,
then it's...
And my stuff is there, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I disappeared without my stuff... then that's a really big red flag. So please look into it.
You like to bring lots of stuff with you
I bring
everywhere.
like 2 purses everywhere.
5. It's dwindled down to 2.
Well, now it's... Oh, well, I brought
sometimes 1.
Yeah.
Sometimes nothing, which is better.
Sometimes nothing. Yeah, I'm getting better. So the police had found Tara's clothes that she had worn to the barbecue the night before her disappearance, bundled up on her floor. So she definitely had come home that night. But what is weird is that everyone who knew Tara said that she was a tidy person who would never leave her clothes like that. So she wouldn't have left her house and had her clothes just thrown everywhere in her, I mean, I'm not that very tidy,
yeah,
so.
Me too.
She also would never have left her dog and cat abandoned without telling anyone about them. So I feel so bad for her animals because they were there for like 2 days and no one knew about them.
Bliss would be dunzos, man.
Oh my God.
My dog has a heart murmur, and if he misses 1 dose, that's a nightmare. So yeah, poor Bliss if something happened to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
There were no signs of forced entry into the home, but Tara's bedroom clock was found switched off and under her bed, and her bedside lamp laid there broken on her bedside table. They held a local search where students, teachers, and volunteers helped to try find Tara, but they didn't find any trace of her. Police knew that Saturday night before Tara's disappearance, she mentored some pageant girls in her home and went to the pageant with them. They also found out Tara went to her neighbor's house for 30 minutes at 8 p.m., and after that, went to the barbecue only a few blocks away. And around 10:30 p.m., she had left to walk home. No one heard any screams that night from Tara's home, and with her purse and keys missing, maybe she had left with someone she knew. So the police started looking into her romantic life if there was no signs of forced entry. And I would assume that she would know the person. The first man that the police looked into was Tara's on and off again boyfriend of 6 years, Marcus Harper. Apparently 2 weeks before Tara disappeared, Harper had ended things with Tara for the last time, and he saw her just a week before she went missing when he claims Tara had shown up to his house begging to take her back, and that she would kill herself if she saw him with another woman. Now, Tara's parents don't buy that, and neither do her friends. It doesn't seem like Tara at all. Police checked into Harper's alibi, which was rock solid, having gone out to a bar with a former cop partner, so he's out. The next suspect was one of Tara's former students, Anthony Vickers. Now, this guy's a little creepy. Tara saw that Vickers was a troubled kid, so she took him under her wing. But then Vickers became obsessed and earlier that year had tried to enter her home. Tara had told police that he had knocked on her doors and windows and ordered Tara to come outside, so she filed a report against him. But other than that incident, police just couldn't draw a solid connection between him and the disappearance. That would have been my prime suspect right there. I mean, how creepy just being nice to someone and then pretty much end up, like, being a stalker.
I mean, at least she filed a report because sometimes people are just like, this is one time, they're really having a hard time, da-da-da-da, like make excuses for the person. Mm-hmm. So at least she filed a report just in case something else happens.
Yeah, because I mean, I've watched some documentaries about people who have been stalked and they just don't want to say anything because they're embarrassed, and it's just like, no, put that shit on file.
Yeah.
You know, anyway. The last suspect was Heath Dykes. He was a captain in the Perry Police Department who presumably was engaging in an affair with Tara behind his wife's back. It was his business card that was wedged in Tara's front door. He was the last known person to be at Tara's at 12:15 a.m. Monday morning because her mother, I guess, called him worried because she's going to get a hold of her.
So people knew about this?
Well, at least because I guess Tara talked to her mom on the regular.
Okay.
And she hadn't heard from her. And so she was worried, so she called.
Well, I guess what I mean is people knew that Tara was seeing this guy.
Yes.
So she had obviously told her mom and maybe some other people.
Everyone knew that she kind of dated around. She had a pretty extensive love life. So he was the last person at Tara's house Monday morning. He had left 24 voicemails on Tara's answering machine the night she had vanished. Who calls that many times in one night?
creepers. Mm-hmm. Obsessive
And
people.
why did he just leave his car in her front door if he was that worried when he could see that her car was still in the driveway? It just seems really weird to me.
Why leave your card anyway? She has your freaking number.
Exactly.
That's
if she's
just
sleeping
really
with you.
strange. Like, why leave a card?
And it just,
you're not a detective trying to ask her information, leaving your info.
And it just seemed really weird because it's like, wouldn't your cop instincts be just high on alert, being like, her car is still here, no one's getting a hold of her, I can't get a hold of her, she's not answering her door. Like, wouldn't you just think, like, hey, I'm a cop here, this just seems fishy. Mm-hmm. So he just seems a little fishy to me. With Osceola being such a small town, rumors started to spread that maybe Tara was kidnapped by a stalker, while others thought the criminal was from their town and was still there. Time had passed, but nothing was coming into light about what had actually happened to Tara. The latex glove they had found was sent to a lab to test for DNA. The lab recovered male DNA and a fingerprint, but of course there was no match to either fingerprint or DNA.
When did this happen again? The 2000s?
2005.
Okay.
Yeah, so right around the same time as yours. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird how that worked out.
Yeah. 3 years passed, and still the police had no clue where Tara was, so the police asked for tips and help from the public. Finally, in 2017, Brooke Sheridan, an Osceola local, came forward with information regarding her boyfriend, Bo Dukes, who was an ex-student of Tara's. Bo had confided in Brooke that back in 2005, Bo's friend, Ryan Alexander Duke, no relation, just friends, but Ryan Alexander Duke had killed Tara, which he then convinced Bo to help dispose of Tara's body by burning it. What makes me so angry is that it took 12 years for her to come forward. 12 years of knowing this information and just letting poor Tara's family and Tara herself not get justice. I can't imagine being a part of Tara's family not knowing what happened to her for 12 years.
I just wonder what's going on in these people's minds. I've always tried to think of this where, like, if I'm watching America's Most Wanted and I see somebody who I know, how am I actually going to process the information? Because we can sit here all we want and be like, how dare you keep the information, right? But it's just like, how are you really going to feel when maybe at this point he's the love of her life and whatever, and that person tells you something horrible? How are you going to process it? And maybe you just don't know how to process it. I mean, at least eventually she came forward. I would like to think that I would say something right away. Mm-hmm. But I've tried to think about, because there was another case, I think, where a girl's brother was guilty of something, and she called the police on him after a bit. And I've tried to think, what if it was my little brother, my baby brother, who I've changed his diapers? If I saw his face on something, what would I really do?
Yeah,
I guess it depends on what he did.
Yeah.
But I just really don't know.
Yeah, I guess you can't really say what you would do unless you were in that situation. Because the mind works really weird ways.
Yeah.
So Brooke finally told Bo to confess, and he was charged in June of 2017 with concealing a death, tampering with evidence, and hindering apprehension of a criminal. Ryan was arrested and charged with the murder of Tara, and in April of 2017, he was indicted on 6 counts, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, burglary, and concealing the death of another. So why did Ryan murder Tara? Ryan confessed that he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol the night he broke into Tara's home. He had planned on stealing her money from her purse, but when she caught him, Ryan struck her with his fist and maybe had choked her, but his memory is fuzzy.
All these people.
I know. Like,
my eyes were closed. I don't remember.
Like, and why are people getting high and, like, getting drunk and just starting to murder people? There's something wrong here, okay? Ryan claimed he picked Tara's home by random and had previously been in contact with her, even though there was a statement by the GBI, which is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which I had no idea what GBI stood for. Took me a bit. They had said that he had been one of her former students, even though he says that he never had contact with her before. Once she had fallen to the ground, Ryan left and came back with some latex gloves and a quilt. But before he came back, Ryan had stopped by a payphone and called Tara's home number, hoping she would answer, but she didn't. Once back at her house, Ryan had wrapped Tara's body in the quilt.
Wait, you said he called Tara's home hoping she would answer because he was hoping that she was still alive.
He didn't think maybe that he killed her yet, so he was hoping that she was still alive.
Yeah.
But
maybe if you only struck her and didn't maybe strangle her.
Right? And, I mean, she was a pretty small woman, you know, so... But yeah, so once back at her house, Ryan had wrapped her body in the quilt. and put her in the back of Beau's pickup truck. They then threw her purse and keys into a public trash bin and then dumped her body in a field. Several days later, they both had returned to her body and moved it deeper into the woods and cremated Tara's body over several days. I mean, how disgusting. I can only imagine, like, a decomposing body, but also just burning it and just, like, the smell.
Coming back so many days.
You would think that they would have found her body, though. I mean, if there were searches for her, but maybe it just was just far enough away that they just wouldn't think that she would be out there. So I feel sorry and sad for Tara and her family, but I'm glad that finally, after all those years, justice was served. And hopefully the family can finally have some closure, knowing now what happened to Tara. I mean, now she's not really missing anymore.
Yeah. It was the book that we read, The Butterfly Garden, where they were talking about, if somebody's been missing so long, do you really need to know? And the character said, that he would give anything to know what happened to his little sister who went missing when she was 6. And it had still been like 30 years, but he was still always wondering, if I look at this blonde woman, is that her? Could that still be her? So he doesn't want to wonder anymore, which is why they would, of course, forever still want to know what happened to their child, whether they find out that, unfortunately, yes, she is gone, or they eventually find her, which would be magical, but usually doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with, there was a serial killer that I was super obsessed with learning about. There's a movie called Changeling with Angelina Jolie, and it's based off of a true story where this woman, her son went missing, and she never gave up, even though, I mean, he was dead, but they couldn't tell for sure, and she never gave up until the day she died, because it's like you can't just give up on someone if you don't know what happened. You never know.
So that was Beauty Queen Murders.
Yeah.
Episode 2.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you guys liked it. I feel like we did better this time.
I think so too, and it looks like it's much longer than before.
Way longer.
And we have a mic, so audio is better.
Woo woo.
And we're sitting in an office.
Not a huge living room.
Yes.
With hardwood floors.
So, that's the end of episode 2. It's raining where we are, and I hope you are having nicer weather than we are.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see you next week.
Woo! Bye.